Hey guys, today we're going to be talking about the 1931 China flood. Okay, so where did this flood take place? It was mostly in the Yangtze River, and the affected regions were Guangxi, Guizhou, Sichuan, and Hubei. And these are just cities around the river, as you can see. And the Yellow River and Grand Canal experienced a lot of flooding as well, because of the original floods. And then Pearl River, which flows through the city of Guangzhou to as far north as the Songhua and Yalu rivers, were also affected, and those rivers go all the way up to the north side of Korea, as you can see. And so what happened? The worst flooding in this river occurred from July to August in 1931, with the rain totaling to about 24 inches. And the Hui River's worst flooding happened on August 19, 1931, when the water level went 53 feet above the normal water level. And then the Yellow River as well was flooded, which affected about 29 million lives.
Okay, so the weather pattern that caused the flood was due to the high levels of precipitation. The winter of 1930 to 1931 was pretty harsh. It left large deposits of snow and ice in the upper attachments of the rivers. These frozen reservoirs melted in the spring and merged with unusually heavy rains and left the rivers and lakes with high water tables. Okay, so the frequency of the flooding and the geographic region that was impacted. So the flooding began in the spring as the river water was pouring into the streets. This caused overflowing in the sewers, and people were just, as you can see on the picture on the right, people were just walking through large bodies of water. And then the China disaster flood covered over 500 square miles of area. And this impact was equivalent to this area size of England and half of Scotland combined.
Okay, so now we're going to take a look at the anthropogenic factors. So a lot of long-term interaction between the human communities and the river basins caused excessive deforestation, wetland reclamation, overextension of river dike networks, which transformed regular flood pulses into destructive ones. And as you can see from this news article, 31 million were seen to face starvation just from the floods destroying buildings, businesses, crops, farmland, etc. And you can see another picture of a man on his boat in one of the streets where massive flooding had occurred.
Okay, so other impacts. Approximately 3.7 million people died either by drowning or by subsequent diseases. Historians have suggested that the number of people affected by the flood may have been almost 53 million people. Around 150,000 people died from drowning, while the rest of the deaths came from starvation and disease, as mentioned before. In addition to that, businesses, houses, and infrastructure were destroyed, leaving millions of people displaced. Farmlands were also destroyed, and about 15% of the wheat and rice crops were eradicated. The combined ecological and economic impacts of a disaster caused many areas to decade from feminine. Okay, so this is a picture. As you can see on the left, that's how the city looked before, and then after the flood took place. On the right side was the aftermath.
Facts. Okay, so societal and economic impacts continued. So the most lethal effect of the flood was not actually the flood itself, but it was the disease that swept through the entire population. And that came from poor water quality, and then because a bunch of crops were destroyed, poor food quality. And the flood covered an area of 32 square miles. So the city was flooded under many feet of water for close to 3 months. And large numbers of people gathered on flood islands throughout the city, with around 30,000 sheltered at a railway embankment in central Hong Kong. Okay, so what were some adaptation strategies the government responded with? This flood was sort of an opportunity for the government to reassert national control over the entire relief infrastructure program, and they did this by employing a range of Chinese and foreign experts, including an epidemiologist, a health minister, and a public health worker, and a hydraulic engineer. And these people worked together to help with flood relief and infrastructure throughout the city. And fun fact, the celebrated author Pearl Buck wrote a bunch of short stories to encourage charitable donations for the flood relief.
Okay, so along with the government response, restoring the floodplains was also an adaptation strategy because it would help manage the climatic variability and change, and as the extensive environmental and socioeconomical benefits as well.
Thank you for listening.